Good morning. I'm Jamey from Stonemaier Games, and I'm so excited to be here with you on the Wormspan launch day. Today is a big day that we've been building up to for the entire month of January and beyond that. And I'm so excited to be here today with you. I'm throughout this video, I'm happy to answer any questions you have about Wormspan or the launch process. If you have a question specific to your order, I'd recommend emailing your order number, if there is an order number, to contact@stonemaier.com. Otherwise, any question that you ask might help other people who have the same question. So feel free to please ask publicly, and I'll answer there. Just only private, like confidential stuff about like your address or your specific order. That stuff is for contact@stonemaier.com. Yeah, I'm so excited today, both for all the Wyrmspan stuff and, of course, for Wyrmspan designer Connie Vogelman, who spent a year designing this game. Inspired by Wingspan for sure, but Connie spent a ton of time designing each and every cave card, each and every dragon card, the hatchlings, the dragon guild. There's so much new stuff that Wyrmspan brings to the wider world of Wingspan. I'm really excited for you to get this to the table. If you get it from us, then it should be delivered in February, maybe March, depending on how many orders we get and how fast our fulfillment centers are. You can also order from retailers if you want. We love the many different retailers around the world. If you have a preferred retailer, you can pre-order from them and get the game in late March. Yeah, I'll keep an eye on questions over here. If I miss your question, of course, feel free to repeat it and I'll get to it. I'm not ignoring any question. Someone says my video is frozen. I don't know. Hopefully that's just temporary. Is it frozen for other people too? I will have over on my other screen, let's see if I can choose the layout. Yeah, there we go. On the other screen, I have our newsletter. So I might flip over there and talk about that a little bit. Good. Molly says it isn't frozen for them. Okay, not frozen in general, maybe just temporarily frozen, or maybe your connection. But I hope you all are doing well. I don't want to forget, I've forgotten a few chocolate of the day in past videos, but I do continue to enjoy chocolate, of course. Today's chocolate of the day is from Alter Eco, 47% cacao, coconut toffee. As you can see, I haven't eaten it yet, so I'm really excited to try this chocolate today. My preferred percentage for chocolate is between like 35 and 50%. So I'm really excited to try this. I love coconut and toffee, so I'm excited to try that as my chocolate of the day. What is your treat of the day? What are you treating to yourself to today? Jed points out there are golden eggs. So we have a lot of different things in the Wyrmspan collection. We have here, I'll bring up my other screen over here. We have Wyrmspan itself, of course. We have the upgrade pack with metal coins and wooden resources. In fact, why don't I hold this stuff up while I'm talking about it too? We have, so here are the metal coins. You can see me small over here. There are the wooden resources. And then golden eggs I don't have in my box right now, but we have the golden eggs as well. We have a special disc golf disc. That's probably the most likely thing to sell out because we don't make a lot of those discs. But we can always make more, of course. For anything that we sell out of, please sign up for a back in stock notification and we will make more. And the Rolling Realms promos. Rolling Realms promos are for a different game, not for Wyrmspan. They're for a game called Rolling Realms, if you're not familiar with it. But they're one of the realms is associated with Wyrmspan. Sean says that his champion membership isn't showing when he's placing his order. Sean, make sure you're logged in. We sent kind of an email about this to champions yesterday. Make sure you're logged in, and then if it works, great. If it doesn't work, then you can contact@stonemaier.com. You can also, if you're comfortable placing the order, even if the champion discount isn't working, it's possible that maybe your champion membership expired and you aren't currently a champion. So you will want to check on that. You probably just want to email contact@stonemaier.com, but you can always place the order and we can retroactively apply the champion discount if you are a champion. But I think probably the go-to is just to make sure you're logged in first, logged in as a champion, and check your champion membership status on Shopify. Kevin says, are the dragons in Wyrmspan warm-blooded? They are, that's a good question. It's, maybe. Like, I think that's the best way to answer it here. Connie has a great answer in the FAQ about why dragons drink milk. And I'll read that out loud here because I think, or why the dragons in Wyrmspan specifically drink milk. Let's see where that answer is. So Connie's answer about dragons drinking milk is, this is Connie speaking. My thought was that if dragons are warm-blooded, a lot of lore depicts them that way, then perhaps many of the other evolutionary constraints on mammals applied to dragons, which could include some kind of extra sustenance when young. Plus, nature is weird. Echidnas and platypuses are mammals that lay eggs, and many reptiles, including garter snakes, give birth to live young. It seemed like milk was a good way to indicate with a shorthand that the resource is relevant only for baby dragons, not for adults. In my mind, dragons are a bit of all of them. They have evolved to fill a bunch of different ecological niches. So some are more like birds, some are more like reptiles, and some are more like mammals. So this is a wide world of dragons. It sounds like some of them, at least, are warm-blooded in the world of Wyrmspan. I see some wonderful treats being mentioned today. I'm just scrolling through looking for questions here. George says, will you add replacement markers for Rolling Realms on the EU store? And he says, and he's looking for more signed cards for the EU store. Yeah, unfortunately, George, I believe I signed a bunch of cards that we sent to the EU store, and I think they were lost. And so I thought we had sent more. But of course, sign up for a back and second notification. I will make a note of those requests, George, if you don't have a way on the website. Where in the world is my pencil? Okay, here we go. So EU store, looking for markers and signed cards. I'll talk to my team about that. I'll sign more cards if I need to. Let's see. Alexander says, any idea if the game is being localized like Wingspan, for example, in Romanian? Alexander, yes, that's a great question. So on our website, you can see all the different languages that Wormspan is being localized into. So currently we have 11 localization partners. So we have Portuguese, Chinese, Czech, French, German, Italian, Dutch, Portuguese in Brazil, Turkish, Spanish, and Polish. That might actually be more than 11 at this point. But those are the ones that we've listed. Those are the ones that our partners have said, hey, you can share this information on your web store. Brett says an interesting thing. The Canada store says that too many requests from his location, so he can't access the store. Hopefully that's temporary, Brett. I'm sure you can maybe refresh and come back in a little bit, and that should work. If not, please let me know. Darius says, did you initially plan to publish a new Wingspan game, or was it more like a spontaneous decision, like I like this game and we can make a new Wingspan game out of it when you first saw the game? Gary, you can find out a lot of information about this in the design diary. I'll give you the truncated version of it, which is that about, I don't know, 3 to 3.5 years into Wingspan's success, so a couple of years ago, internally we started talking about if we should consider we had seen that basically Wingspan had brought joy to a lot of tabletops. So it was meeting the goal for our company, right? Bring joy to tabletops worldwide. I'm sorry, and I need to put this on the screen. And we just asked the question, should we consider expanding this brand to start with other themes? And we also don't want to just reskin the game. If we do pick a theme, we don't want to just put new art and new names on cards. We want to actually examine what these themes mean for a different version of Wingspan. And our initial conclusion was that we probably wanted to make a more complex version of Wingspan. And then we selected between two themes. It came down to between dragons and dinosaurs. We went with dragons, obviously. And I then talked to Elizabeth about it, and I asked her because I knew how busy Elizabeth was, and I asked her if she would be okay with me working with Connie Vogelman on the game, having Connie be the designer. I had worked with Connie on Apiary and was really impressed by Connie's design skills and communication skills, all the skills that we look for in a great designer. And so, yeah, that's the origin story. So Connie said yes. She came up with Connie and I collaborated on an initial version of the game that we pitched to Elizabeth. Elizabeth said, yes, this fits. I'm okay with this existing within the Wingspan world. And then Connie ran with it, with Elizabeth and I serving as developers for the game. That's the short version. Check out the design diaries for the long version. Melissa said, how's my orange boss today, Walter? I think Walter has a hairball that he's working on. So we're expecting a hairball from Walter sometime today. That's the forecast. And hopefully it comes out at a time where we can deal with it. Walter's a long-haired cat, so that happens to him every now and then. Molly says that the hatchlings in Wormspan are her favorite mechanism. I love the hatchlings too. She says, so Molly has an advanced copy of the game. She is one of the content creators on The Mill. And she says, I had a great time caching milk and moving along the Dragon Guild with her spotted leash lichen eater. That's what the dragon is. That's great. Mark mentions that single cards are out in the Australia store too. Sounds like after this, I need to sign some more cards. Happy to do that for those who like the sign cards. And again, I only sign cards for games that I designed. It feels weird for me to sign like a Wingspan card or a Wormspan card, even though I was involved in those games. I'm not the designer, so it feels a little odd. So the only signed cards that you'll ever see from me on a web store are games that I actually designed. So I guess my most recent game is Expedition, so I can sign a bunch of cards for that and for other games as well. Joshua says, what is the Wyvern disc? He didn't see that when he ordered. That is, it's a disc golf disc. It's a custom stamped disc that we make for playing disc golf with. And it should have been in the launch collection. Let me see if it is in the launch collection here. Yeah, it's in the launch collection for Wormspan. Let's see if it's on the homepage as well. Yeah, it's on the homepage now as well. Sorry if it wasn't there when you ordered. If you do see something that you miss, and again, please, for everyone, take all the time you need to place your order over the next few hours, over the next day. Make sure that everything you want is in your cart, including a champion membership if you want to save 20% on everything in your cart, if you aren't already a champion. And but, however, if you already placed an order and you realize you missed something, please send your order number. Don't place another order. Don't try to cancel the original order. Just send your original order number to contact@stonemaier.com and let them know what you want to add to your order. And they can add stuff to your order, and it'll send you a little invoice that you'll take care of, and then your order will be complete. Yeah. Just scrolling through looking for other questions here. Loopy says, any thoughts on a future Wingspan with an IP attached, for instance, D&D or Pokemon? I don't think we do D&D since we have our own world of dragons that we're playing around with. Pokemon, we did actually reach out to the Pokemon company when we had this conversation about the Wingspan brand a few years ago. We reached out to Pokemon because it actually seemed like a really good fit, and they were not interested at all. So unfortunately, there won't be a Pokemon Wingspan. Mark says, a question on board game design. During the first playtest of the game design process, how complete should the rulebook be? For the first playtest, I actually wouldn't say you even need a rulebook. You kind of just need, since you are participating in the first playtest, you know all the rules. You need to have, I would say, reference guides for other players. You need them to be able to interact with the interface of the game. But I don't typically write the rulebook until before the blind playtesting process. That's more when you need it. Chris says he's excited about Wyrmspan. He says, as a family that's sensitive to latex allergies, any possibility we could see neoprene playmats for Wormspan in the future? We can't wait to take Wormspan for a spin. Chris, I appreciate you saying that. So we make rubber playmats, which I understand there are latex allergies associated with rubber playmats. They are more eco-friendly, though, than neoprene playmats. So we don't plan to make neoprene playmats. Fortunately, Wormspan does come with playmats in the box. You have the cardboard playmats. I'll hold them up right now. But I won't hold them up. They're under a bunch of stuff in the box here. But the cardboard playmats will work just fine for Wormspan, and they come with the game, so you don't have to spend anything extra on them. Let's see. Ben asked about the Altered TCG Kickstarter. I actually backed this Kickstarter yesterday for 2 starter packs. I've been intrigued by the game, particularly since it's a dueling game where you're not actually fighting with the opponent. You're just trying to explore better than your opponent, which I think is a really neat hook for a 2-player dueling style game. And I love the art in the game. And so, yeah, I backed for 2 starter packs just to have a little fun with it. I might add a few booster packs, but the next pledge level was like considerably more expensive for a ton of booster packs. And I don't need that many. I just want to open a few just for fun. So yeah, I'm curious about it. Luke says, have you ever done a TED Talk? No, I haven't done a TED Talk. I get very nervous speaking live in front of people in front of me. I'm comfortable speaking to the camera like this, but very, very nervous for public speaking. I think they still do TED Talks, as far as I know. There's a TED YouTube channel. Let's see if TED's still going on here. It probably, well, I will look it up now. I'm sure. I think it is, as far as I know. Jed says, have you considered getting discs made by a manufacturer other than Innova? We have I understand that people have different brands that they prefer. I really enjoyed working with it. So I think we'll just continue to work with them. They've been really, really helpful for every disc that we make, or that they make. We custom stamp. We send them custom stamp. So I don't think so. But I understand that there are a lot of other disc brands that are beloved by different people for different reasons. Let's see here. I'm going to send a quick note to a coworker about something that someone mentioned here. Sorry for the dead air. Let's see. I'll answer a question while I'm doing that. Stace of Spades says, what 80s cartoons were your favorites? So I was born in the early 80s. And I love Saturday cartoons. I think my favorite was probably X-Men. I really love the X-Men cartoon. And I also liked Inspector Gadget when that was on, the cartoon version of it, and that was on when I was younger. What were your favorites? That's a fun question. Usually I like to have a question of the day here. I figured most questions would be coming from you all today. Let's see if I do have a question of like a blog post. I'm thinking about writing something like that. Yeah, well, okay. So this is one question that has been on my mind a little bit. So I somewhat took a vacation last week, but I considered it a working vacation. I traveled with Megan and her family to Grand Cayman to get out of the St. Louis cold and into the warm, humid weather of the tropical island that is Grand Cayman. And but I considered it a working vacation. I was on vacation. I spent a lot of time doing vacation-like things, but I was also having fun just doing work while at the beach, and that was really satisfying to me. And I know there's kind of a lot of people advocate the idea of completely unplugging when you're on vacation, but usually I really enjoy my work. I don't want to completely unplug, and I also don't want a big pile of work when I get back. So I was thinking about maybe writing a blog post on that topic, the idea of that I don't know, just saying it's okay for people, or at least for me, to take a working vacation sometime, to go someplace, given how remotely many of us work now, that it's okay to go to someplace, different or fun, and just work, and with the intention of working there. Maybe not working all the time there, but working part of the time when you're there. I'm curious what you all think about that concept. Have you ever taken a working vacation? Do you think that's crazy that that someone would want to work while on vacation? Hopefully not, but because that is my preference. But yeah, what do you think about that? And I will say we had a wonderful time on the island. We went there to eat a lot of good food, drink some good drinks, snorkel. I snorkeled so much. I snorkeled with sea turtles and just a ton of random fish in the water. Beautiful fish going about their lives. I love seeing that. And also some stingrays. Saw a lot of stingrays in Stingray City in Cayman, and also starfish and bioluminescent algae. So much amazing snorkeling in the Cayman Islands. Zach says, how do you decide what to include, when to include wooden resources and when to include cardboard? What is the typical cost difference between the two? Good question. I prefer wooden resources. So if I'm always looking at the value of the game, the price that we're trying to offer for the game. And for Wormspan, for example, we were trying to offer the same cost as Wingspan, or pretty close to the same cost if possible. Adding wooden resources to the game would have significantly added to the cost and thus the price for Wormspan. And we didn't want to do that. We focused more of our budget on the speckled eggs and the many cards, all the other things that are included in the game. It has multiple boards, things like that. The cost difference, I don't know, depends on how big you're trying to make the tokens, how many you're trying to make. It can be but it is a significant increase. So you're going from the difference of like one or two punch boards, and I don't know, which can cost around 25 cents to between like $1 to $3 in cost for the wooden tokens, maybe even more than that sometimes. Betsy says, do you think it makes it easier or more difficult, or neither, to design a new game based on an existing game system like Wormspan or Wingspan? It's a great question, Betsy. it's a really difficult balance, I think. It is, I would say it's maybe slightly easier than starting from scratch because you have a lot of information about the game that you're building off of. But you add the difficult puzzle, and I encountered this with Expeditions, the sequel to Scythe, which ended up being more of a different game, I think, than Wormspan is to Wingspan. But Connie definitely experienced it too, where a lot of the feedback both of us got for those respective games from people was, this is too similar to the first game, or this isn't similar enough to the first game. So you have this additional balancing act because you have that frame of reference to another game that you don't have if you're designing a game from scratch. So I would say a little bit easier because you have a lot of information to go by, but you also add that question that you don't have if you're designing the game from scratch. Great question, Betsy. I like that. Let's see. I think I missed the question, but Valerie has a good answer here. So we have the same prices for our products across all regions, but different regional web stores or different regions have different laws for listing the tax in the listed price for the product versus adding tax at checkout. So like in the US, we have sales tax, of course, and it's added at checkout. It isn't in the listed price of the product. In Europe, when you buy a product online, you're required to list the VAT, the value added tax, in the listed price for the product. You don't pay it again at checkout. It's just in that listed price. So the prices actually are the same. It's just that taxes are shown or added at different times based on your region. It's a question we get a lot from Europeans during our launch processes. Sam says, wishing you a successful launch day. How has the feeling of launch day changed for you since Viticulture? It's changed a lot. I mean, so I launched Viticulture back in 2012 as a Kickstarter. I didn't even know if it would fund. I hadn't made the game yet. It's now very different with Wormspan. We've already made all these copies of the game, and we're selling them, and we're shipping them to people starting in February. So very different feel there. It also feels nice to have a team behind me now. It was really just me back then in 2012 and for a long time. So on a launch day, it would be really tough for me to be live doing something like this because I'd be getting so many questions by email and public questions and answering those questions. I still get a lot on a launch day, but I have Dave and Joe handling customer service questions. I have Alex working with distributors and localization partners. Susanna too, working with retailers and localization partners. So a lot of big team effort going on today. Yeah. Let's see. Heather says, will the disc be available for wholesale? No, Heather, we actually lose a little bit of money on every disc that we sell, especially if we sell them to champions. So adding a wholesale discount on top of that would have us losing a lot of money per disc. So the discs are not intended for resale. It's kind of just a fun thing we did starting with April Fools a couple of years ago, and we found that people enjoyed this wonderful outdoor dexterity game, and we continue to offer the discs. But we are literally offering them at cost, the same cost that we got them from Innova. And so even with freight shipping added on, yeah, we're losing money on every disc that we sell, just a little bit. The only way that we really save money on them a little is if they're added to an order rather than being sold individually. But wholesale, no, wholesale is out of the question for the discs, unfortunately. But Heather, you could, if you really like the disc or you want to sell discs, I'd recommend reaching out to Innova and asking them if they could make a custom printed disc for you, for your store, whatever your vendor of choice is. The Board Game Garden can relate to this. Yeah, thanks for relating to that. She says, I'm the same way. It's much easier sitting in a room alone with a camera than in a room with even just a dozen people in front of me. Makes me nervous. I don't like standing up in front of a room and like giving a speech, even if I know the people. It just makes me really, really nervous. So, but it doesn't make me nervous to talk to the camera, even though I know people are on the other side of the camera watching right now. Sorry, just scrolling down looking for questions here. Here's a question from Aaron. Design question. I'm designing my first board game. At what point should I be conscious of the cost of components? That's a good question, Aaron. I think it's good to be aware of the marketability of your game from fairly early on, especially if your intent behind design designing the game is to publish the game. Sometimes we just design stuff for fun, right? You're not designing to publish, or you're experimenting, you're getting to know the design process. But if you're designing for the purpose, the intent, the motivation of publishing it someday, at some point, I think you should be aware of the marketability of the game, and cost is part of that. Something to keep in mind with a frame of reference to other games. How, like, if you have another comparable game to your game, and you can see the price for that game and the components for that game, people might inevitably compare your game to that game a little bit. So you might want to keep that in mind. So some point fairly early on in the process and throughout the process, I think it's something to be aware of. Good question. Tim says, do you watch the sport, or did you watch the sports ball? Tim is referring, I think, to the football championships this past weekend. We did tune in a little bit to the games when we had some time. We were in Grand Cayman when the games were happening, and the results turned out great because I'm a 49ers fan, and Megan's family are Kansas City Chiefs fans, and so we are going to meet up in the Super Bowl again. We met, I think, 3 or 4 years ago in the Super Bowl. Kansas City won, and so I'm hoping that my 49ers will pull out a victory this year. But really, I'm just hoping for a good game in the Super Bowl in a few weeks. Vera says, in terms of 80s cartoons, some of the airships remind me of what was in Tailspin. Did you ever watch that? I think I watched a little bit of Tailspin, but that might have been happened a little bit as I was getting a little bit older and not watching as many cartoons when Tailspin was on. Let's see. Miles mentions a show called Dinosaurs. I'm not familiar with that one. Ray says he was looking at getting the Champions subscription, but getting an Air added to the cart. Interesting. Hopefully that worked out, Ray. If you have any problems with it, feel free to contact at stonemaier.com, and we can help out with that. Let's see. R says, do you think more Wingspan fans will purchase this, or those who said, I wish this was about dragons and I'd play it? I hope they put their money where their mouth is, because that's what they asked. I hope so too. Yeah, if anyone along the last 5 years has said, I wish you would make a dragon version of Wingspan, well, we did kind of. It is not entirely the same game as Wingspan. Definitely not a reskin. But yeah, I certainly hope those people support it. But yeah, we are hoping that the game is, well, I know the game is different enough that I think Wingspan fans will have fun with it. And I hope people who never gave Wingspan a shot will give Wormspan a shot for whether it's the theme, the mechanisms, the weight. And then maybe also they might give Wingspan a try after that too. So I'm hoping the two games are complementary, not competitive against each other. Barry says, as the owner of a friendly local game store that teaches your games, it's disappointing we can't stock this title until a month after it releases on your web store into Champions. Hopefully you consider changing that policy on future releases. Barry, I appreciate that feedback. It isn't something that we're going to change. We view this considerably better than, for example, a Kickstarter. If you backed a Kickstarter today, you wouldn't get that game as a retailer for, I don't know, 8 months, 12 months, a year. We're letting you get the game within 2 months. So we think that's huge comparably to that. Also, there's a whole process to get the game to you, Barry, that involves oftentimes going through a distributor. You might be ordering directly from us. So there's a few different steps to get the game to you, where the step for us to get the game to the direct consumers is just directly selling to them. And also, our margins on our web store are really important for Stonemaier Games' success. Like, wholesale margins are pretty rough. We love our distributor and retailer partners, but it's nice that we can sell our own games a little bit earlier than anybody else. And really, it's usually around 8 weeks. It's not that long. And I do appreciate your support. So yeah, I appreciate the feedback. I understand the disappointment, but I think comparable to a Kickstarter or crowdfunding campaign, I think there's a huge difference. I think we are serving you in a special way, especially given our Fortress program with GTS. The way that you can order directly from us and get a guaranteed amount, so that you can serve your customers with a guaranteed amount of products. Yeah, good feedback though. I appreciate you sharing that. Esther says, have you ever played Dungeons and Dragons? I actually have not, and I need to. I haven't played many role-playing games at all. But I do hope your D&D group has fun exploring Wyrmspan. The dragons in Wyrmspan are more like the birds of our world. So you would look out the window in this world of Wormspan, and you would see birds out there, and or you see dragons out there. So they aren't like, this isn't a dragon slaying game, which I think it often happens in D&D. But maybe there probably are D&D campaigns where you're getting along with dragons, you're making friends with them, you're interacting with them in more friendly ways than just slaying them too. Some people are commenting that they, kind of a mix here. Let's see. I talked about working on vacation. Fairly odd. Parent says, I don't mind a working vacation because there's still a lot to do outside of working hours, and I find my working hours are a little less in general. I definitely relate to that. There's also a comment coming up that's a little bit different. We'll hear both sides of it. Ian says, absolutely work on every vacation. I'm a writer, so you work when you have to. But Steve says, he doesn't work on vacation. I'm there to have fun and not think about work. Could totally relate to that too, Steve. And we had a lot of fun on vacation. But I also have fun with a lot of parts of my job. Like I truly enjoy a lot of what I do. And so if I can have the fun, if I can do the fun parts of my job someplace that is also fun in different ways, looking out on a beach where it's warm, that was fun for me. Jeff says, with his kind of work, he doesn't want to bring it with me. And when I'm on vacation, but I just traveled to a tropical island. Oh, that's great. You did too. And love catching up on creative writing in that setting. That's a perfect example of that. That not exactly your full-time job, but still something that you are working on or working towards and doing that in a different place. I love that. I won't go to all. I'm going to skim to all the comments, but I won't post them all here. But I'll end with Valerie's. I think it's okay to work during your vacation if you're passionate about your work, but it shouldn't be expected by employers. Great point, Valerie. I really, really like that. That your employer should not expect you to work on vacation. I'm going to make a note of that because that is a good differentiator here. That employers should not expect it, or should not even ask for it. Ask for or require it. Yeah, excellent point. Oliver says, any plans on having a table to demo Wyrmspan at Geekway this year? Yeah, we had a table last year at Geekway, a little booth where we were mainly there to teach and share games and have fun with people who wanted to try out our games at that table. We'll definitely have Wormspan there as well, and hopefully also the Expeditions expansion. I don't know if we'll be selling it quite at that point, but we should have it on the table. I think. Maybe. We'll see. We'll see how the timing works out. Pablo says, do you envision a series with Wingspan adjacent mechanisms, or is Wormspan a one-off? Honestly, right now, it's just Wormspan. This is all we have. We don't have anything in the works. We don't have anything planned. But if we see that the game brings joy to a lot of people, and that joy could be expanded by something else in the game, it's certainly a possibility. It would be fairly easy, not easy in terms of design, but in terms of manufacturing something and fitting it in the box. So we could add more cards, dragon cards, cave cards, more guilds. That is certainly possible. But you asked, do I envision it? Currently, we do not have a vision for the future of Wormspan besides the core game itself. Let's see. Nate says, did you consider reprinting the Tapestry, Fantasy, and Future civs in the update pack so they would match the new iconography or graphic layout on the new balanced civs? It's a good question. Yeah, that we didn't reprint the civs because we haven't detected any extreme imbalances in the Fantasy and Future civs. So we did not consider that, and probably not going to happen. We did include kind of a complexity guide I believe we included it, a full guide in the pack, or maybe we just included it on the civs themselves. But there is a guide somewhere. Maybe it's in Fantasies and Futures itself, the complexity guide. It's somewhere. So we have the guide in there, just not printed on the civs themselves. Matt says, what do you think about digital adaptations of board games? Seems like the industry is seeing the benefits they can provide. I have a few articles on this topic that go into depth in terms of my answer, Matt. The short version of my answer is I like digital versions of games for the purpose of teaching people how to play the game, getting them comfortable with the game, and hopefully inspiring a tabletop purchase, and also for connecting with people that you wouldn't normally be able to game with on the tabletop. I have a game night every other week that's just on Board Game Arena, where I play with people who I don't normally get to play games with because they aren't in St. Louis. Most of them aren't in St. Louis. So I really enjoy that. At the same time, it baffles me a little bit that publishers would put their game, or at least the full game, on Board Game Arena within a month or so of the game launching. I feel like that does maybe, at least for Stonemaier Games, that would do a disservice to the amount of time and effort that we put in and investment that we put into creating a tabletop game. I think there's a future for any of our games on Board Game Arena, but not within the first year, probably not even within the first 2 years of the game's launch, because I want people to first experience the game on the tabletop and then explore it on Board Game Arena. We do offer our games on Tabletopia for those who want to fiddle around with the game and see if it's a game that resonates with them, and they can also play remotely with other people on Tabletopia. Let's see. Keith says, do you think Wormspan will offer more strategic depth than Wingspan, or are the games just too different? I think the games are different. I think Wingspan offers a lot of strategic depth, and I also think Wormspan offers a lot of strategic depth. Yeah. Phil says, is there a big difference in producing custom size cards compared to standard sizes? There is not a big difference, no. So basically cards are printed typically on big sheets. And so if you have, say you have a lot of tiny cards in the game, you want to make a lot of tiny cards, you can fit more of them on a sheet. The cost will be less than if you made giant cards, because you can fit more tiny cards than a giant card on the sheet. In terms of the sizing, you do have to create I think it's called a die cut. There might be a different term for cards, but you have to, if you create a size of a die cut that doesn't already exist, then there is a one-time sunk cost that's usually a few $100s. It isn't all that expensive. So, and after that, it's just a matter of how many cards you're fitting on the sheet. So there's a small added cost, but it is not significant if there's a non-standard size. I will say, though, that we get questions all the time about card sleeves. And so if you, I would keep that in mind, that there is a very vocal, passionate group of people who care about card sleeves quite a bit. And you might want to keep them in mind because there are people who love to sleeve their cards. So you might want to make sure there are sleeves out there that fit the card sizes that you want to make. Bill says, as a developer, one of the many hats I wear at my job is a developer, which is someone who helps make an existing game even more fun, even more balanced, even more intuitive. Bill says, how do you decide as a developer when you've reached a point when you feel confident that the game is ready for release? So that is a big part of what the developer is thinking about. So developer, again, not a designer, a developer, someone who's looking at the final 20% of a game, making the game even more fun, even more intuitive, even more balanced. Part of that is intuition. My gut feeling that a game is ready, that the game can't get any better. And part of it is the data that we have. We always ask for, when we play test games, we ask for people to rate the games, and we want to see those ratings get between like 8, 9, and 10. When really, really high ratings for a game. If we're still getting low ratings in late playtesting stages, we know something's wrong with it, and we know we need to continue to work on the game at that point. So a little bit of data, a little bit of gut. Reggie popped in to say, Year of the Dragon. That's Wyrmspan. This is, well, it will soon be the Year of the Dragon for the Chinese calendar, the lunar calendar, I believe. Fairly Odd Parent says, with the number of copies you pre-ordered, so this is the number of copies of Wyrmspan, 100,000 copies of Wyrmspan that we invested in, that we made, so that people like the retailer who commented earlier don't have to wait a long time to get the game. They can get it really soon instead of waiting a long time. How many do you need to sell just to break even, if you want to answer? A lot. A lot. I mean, making 100,000 games is a very expensive endeavor. I don't know the math offhand. It depends also how we sell them. If we're selling some direct, and that's why the cash flow of selling direct is really, really helpful for us. Of getting some of that cash flow in, and then later on that cash flow is complemented by later distribution payments and payments from retailers, which we don't receive right away, unless the retailers order directly on our retailer web store. So it's a big number. I don't know offhand what that number is. Here's a nice comment from someone in Japan. His wife and I run an English school for adults. We can travel and work as long as we have internet access. We explore between classes, so it's great. Hope to meet you in Japan someday. Jamey, thank you, Jamey, for saying that. I'm actually working on brushing up on my Japanese right now because we're planning to travel to Japan sometime this year. I haven't been there since 2002, which is when I finished studying abroad there in Kyoto. So I'm going to travel to Japan sometime this year, and maybe we'll get to meet you there. What city are you in Japan? A few people have nice things to say about Susanna, one of my coworkers. I'm always happy to hear that. Oh, sorry, Kevin. Lifting your. Here we go. Pestilence says, "Do the rubber playmats fit in the game box? Any lid lift potentially?" Probably, yeah. Like here's, I mean, my box isn't all that neatly organized, but here's what my box looks like right now. Probably a few more, too many bags than I need. I can get rid of some of these bags, but there are some bags for tokens. Like I have redundant tokens right now, just because I have the wooden tokens and the cardboard token. It depends on a few different factors. It depends on how many rubber playmats you get. It depends on whether or not you keep the cardboard playmats in the box. If you don't do that, you're going to gain a lot of room. And it depends on whether or not you want to roll them or fold them. Fold them once. Here's what the rubber playmat looks like. Now you can see here. So it depends on all those factors. But in terms of like length and width and height and all that, it will fit in the box. There will probably be, I mean, if you're trying to fit 5 of them in there, there will probably be some lid lift a little bit. But that also really does depend on what you do with the cardboard playmats. If you take those out, maybe put them on your shelf someplace else, should be fine. Nathan says, are there plans to bring Wormspan to the Switch as you did with Wingspan? So we would love to work with Monster Couch. Monster Couch is the digital developer that produced Wingspan Digital. We'd love to work with them on Wormspan. We think they did a fantastic job and are doing a fantastic job on Wingspan. But they need to play the final copy of Wormspan first. So we are sending them a copy of the game, and they're going to consider it and hopefully decide to partner with us on a digital version of the game, including a one on Switch. Let's see. Brad says, will there be a diagram for packing the box like Wingspan has on the side? No, we didn't put one on Wormspan. We have playtesters on the side of the box because I don't know. There isn't much organization to the box of Wormspan. You're just putting cards in bags, and you're putting tokens in these 2 containers. Putting probably resources in one and eggs in another. So beyond that, there really isn't much to organize in the box. I think in this case, it's pretty intuitive. But I do like putting those box diagrams there when we have the ability to do so. Usually box organization is something that happens fairly late in the process. And so sometimes it's a little bit too late to add it to the side of the box. But we try to do that when we can. Mike has a nice comment. He says the Stonemaier Games' first anniversary is tomorrow. As a Stonemaier champion, it has been a ridiculously good value. Thank you, Mike, for being a champion for the last year. People who become Stonemaier champions are getting a discount, and their orders will ship first in each region. But they're also supporting the other content that we make at Stonemaier Games, the YouTube channel, the blog in particular, those 2 things in particular. Champions, they're supporting that content, which hopefully adds value to other people and other creators and other gamers. Heather, I believe, is another retailer. And thank you, Heather, for recognizing this. I know retailers don't have to recognize it, but Heather says, love that you don't do Kickstarters and just start selling. We feel like that's a good way to support not only our customers, but also retailers too. And I appreciate you seeing that. Someone also mentioned that if you're in St. Louis, there is a local pickup option at Miniature Market. Unfortunately, Miniature Market recently closed one of their stores, the store that I used to go to from time to time. But they have another store in a place called Cave Springs right outside St. Louis that has a pickup option for people in St. Louis. So you can save on shipping that way. And I think you should be able to get, hopefully that will result in people getting their orders pretty quickly there. I don't know how quickly they're going to process those local pickup orders, but hopefully it'll be pretty fast. Joshua says, what 80s and 90s cartoon would you love to see as a modern board game? So I mentioned 2 of them earlier. I mentioned X-Men, and I mentioned... what was the other one I mentioned? X-Men and Inspector Gadget. Inspector Gadget game would be kind of fun. In Inspector Gadget, I love the little like technological book that I believe Penny, the character Penny, had. I love that. I love that little device. Like the idea of having a book that could do so much. I would love to have that device as like a player mat in a board game. I think that'd be a lot of fun. And there are player mats that feel that way a little bit. Like in Boon Lake, there are these little switches that you can toggle. That gives me that feel of that special book. Essentially like an early version of a tablet in Inspector Gadget. Dev says, how often have you played games that you felt were similar enough to compete rather than complement each other? Individual examples are probably subjective, but how have you learned from them? That's a great question, Jev. And maybe I need to do a video on that, like this or that video between two similar games. It has happened. I would say I don't actually compare games in that way all that often, but there are times where I see a new game that looks fairly similar to a game that I already have and I already love. And sometimes that can draw me to the new game, but sometimes that can give me the feeling of, oh, I already have that or something pretty close to that. I can't think of any examples offhand right now, but I will make a note about like a this or that video. That might be a hard one to think of. Like sometimes content creators phrase it in ways that games that kill other games or games that replace other games. And that inherently feels a little bit negative to me. So I don't want to approach it from that angle, but I'll think about that. Good question. I like that question. Adam says, if there's ever an expansion, I hope the expansion box can be used as an insert or card storage in the base game. That's a clever idea of making a smaller expansion box for Wingspan that maybe, or for Wormspan, that maybe could be the width of like a sleeved card, so we can have that card holder. That's a really clever idea, Adam. I'll make a note of that. I don't think we've done that before with an expansion box. Wormspan is one of the first games that we've created where we intentionally didn't put an insert in it. We just put the containers because we didn't think the insert would really do all that much. And so yeah, I love that idea for Wormspan if we make an expansion box. Could be a little bit like the fan art pack for Wormspan doubles as an insert for those cards. Yeah. All right, so I know I'm scrolling past a lot of comments today. I am just looking for questions because I know there are a lot of questions that I'm trying to answer before I get to 11 o'clock here in St. Louis. Mike says, is launching through your web store turning out to be stable and sustainable? It is. It is. It takes a lot of effort to run 4 different web stores plus a retailer web store. That's a lot, but it is stable and sustainable. Does it seem like you have room to grow with the model, or would you want to change to grow in a new direction? I think we like our current direction. So basically, our thought is we want to serve customers the way that they want to be served. In other words, we want customers to be able to buy our products in the way that they want to buy them. Some customers want to buy from our web store. Some want to buy from their local game store. That's why we have different ways of ensuring that local game stores can get our products. Some want to buy from online game stores. That's okay too. Some want to buy from Amazon or places that aren't specifically about games. Some want to buy our games in other languages from localization partners. So we're trying to meet all of those needs. It's a big task to meet all those needs, or those different preferences. But yeah, that's our goal, and that's, I think, is the direction we're trying to continue going in. Darius says, when you work with games with lots of cards like Wormspan, Wingspan, how much math Excel happens in the background to balance everything? Quite a bit. Like in Wingspan, Elizabeth has a giant spreadsheet that she uses. In Wormspan, I think Connie probably had a spreadsheet too. In fact, I'm almost positive she did, because she uses it to export into or import that data into the cards that she's making. I think Connie has a blog post about that from the apiary time period when apiary came out. So quite a bit happens when you have a lot of cards like that, where you're trying to balance, like, what is the value of this resource to this many victory points, to this size, this for like how many different habitats can the dragon or bird go in. A fair amount of math, a big formula goes into that. Jet says, I see there's a Libertalia promo coming, but is there any other content in the works? So the only things that we've announced, that's a good question. I'll show you my other screen real quick while I'm answering this question. So here is our current progress chart. So you can see Tapestry revised civs still shipping a little bit to Europe and maybe even a little bit to the US. It took longer than we hoped in the US, and I'm sorry about that. But you can see here are the things that we have announced. You can see the Libertalia promo pack probably coming pretty soon, Expeditions expansion, Rolling Rooms Redux, and then a bunch of code names. And you can see that we are working on the apiary expansion and the 4th Wingspan expansion. This is all the stuff that we've announced from Stonemaier Games right now. Let's see if there's anything else here that I wanted to highlight about the newsletter real quick. All the Wormspan stuff, of course. These links will take you, these are the best links to click, because they'll take you to all the new stuff that we launched today, whether it's Wormspan or otherwise. And then, again, I have a reminder for those who were waiting to get the Tapestry revised Civ packs until they could order it with Wormspan, is still on our web store and should be on the Canada web store too. Let me double check to make sure of that. So Canada, here we go. Should be back in stock. Hopefully we did that. Good. Back in stock there. Probably doesn't need the launch label anymore, but that is back in stock over there. Other things, yeah, the Wingspan nesting box is back in stock. We had some Wingspan expansions go out of stock for a little bit. They're back in stock now where they should be. And oh yeah, the big news about the Scythe Complete Rulebook. If you've been waiting for us to reprint the Scythe Complete Rulebook, we never really got quite enough interest in the Complete Rulebook to do a mass production of it again. But we decided to work with Print and Play Productions to have them printed on demand. And so if their shipping is the friendliest for the US. So you can order it from the US, you can get the shipping price pretty much what you pay from the Stonemaier Games web store. You can get that from Print and Play Productions using the link on the web store right here. If you're not in the US, I recommend joining a group order. So I have a Google Doc going here of people who have said that they're not in the US, but they are interested in the rulebook. And what we might end up doing is Stonemaier Games will purchase some of those complete rule books, spiral bound complete rule books. We're not going to make the hardback version anymore. We're going to purchase some of them from Print and Play and ship to our fulfillment centers in Europe, Australia, and Canada to offer a friendlier shipping value. But we're only going to do that if enough people sign up for us to do that. So for now, I think most of the people who wanted it are in the US, and so you can get it from Print and Play Productions now. Yeah, a few other things in the newsletter there. Ian says, it's been a very busy year for you. Expeditions and Apiary in 2023, Wyrmspan in 2024. Ian asks, what's next? I love the question of what's next, but what's next really is for us to ship Wyrmspan to you. That's the thing that we're focused on, getting Wyrmspan to you right now. That's what's next. I have had fun recently playtesting a new product that we're working on, doing some development on other games that will come out in future years, but those are all secret right now. Not ready to talk about them yet. Oh, Chad said he liked the packaging for the revised Civ pack. I'm glad you like it. I don't have an image of it up on my screen over here, but we used some new packaging method that shows you that the box is just to be recycled afterward, and it is completely recyclable, and you can put that content into your copy of Tapestry. Toby says, I wish we could run a tabletop role-playing game for you someday. I'd love to do a one-shot. If you want to run a one-shot with me to participate in, I'm in. I'd love to do one. Probably, no more than 2 or 3 hours, but I would love to do that. That would be actually a lot of fun to do. Do maybe a live stream on the Stonemaier Games Discord channel or something like that, where we do a role-playing game together with people, and they can participate, they can watch. That'd be a lot of fun. I'm not an actor. I'm not the type of person who is over the top in any sort of role-playing situation, but I'm more of a mechanical person in that aspect. But I do enjoy making thematic choices in games. So I'm saying this as a caveat because I don't know if I will be entertaining. I won't probably even try to be entertaining, but I will be engaged if someone wants to run or participate in a one-shot 2 to 3 hour role-playing game with me. I'd love to do that. David says he's never done D&D, so I would love to do it with David too. David has worked quite a bit on Wingspan and Wormspan, as well as other games, the Automa versions of those games. He is part of the Automa factory, and David put a lot of work into Wormspan. Thank you, David, for all the work that you put into the solo mode for this game, which is included in the game. Nancy Jane says that she's intrigued by Wormspan and thinks that the theme of Wormspan may appeal to some more folks that she plays games with. We're hoping so. We're hoping some people who never tried Wingspan because of the theme, for whatever reason, not a reason I agree with, but for whatever the reason, that they might give Wormspan a try, and that might even open them up to the possibilities that Wingspan provides for them. Michelle says, what are the card sleeve recommendations for Wormspan? I don't know a lot about sleeves. We try to make our cards so they don't need to be sleeved, but if I have heard that Mayday has card sleeves that are in the 57 by 87 millimeter size. That's the size for the dragon cards. And also they have, I've heard, 57 by 57 and 60 by 60 millimeter square card sizes for the cave cards in the game. Alexander says, what is your opinion on Dexterous when it comes to using it as the design software? I don't know what Dexterous is. I use InDesign. Alexander says, or should I invest my energy in learning InDesign in order to create the components? I would experiment. I haven't tried Dexterous. I think there's a different one that Connie uses that I'm forgetting the name of offhand. Let's see if I can find the guest post from Connie so I can say what the name of that is. Oh, and there was a guest post from the Raising Robots folks too on our website. Let me look at a few different options here real quick. If my computer will work. So let's see, Stonemaier Games. Okay. Connie, let's see if this will bring it up. So my short answer is experiment with a couple different platforms and find the one that works best for you. Here, Connie has her answer, and I'll also look for raising robots. Let's see if I can find this. I think we posted a guest post on this topic. Yeah, great. Okay, here's one called Component Studio. That was used by Navu Games, who made Raising Robots. Connie used, what did she use? Scrolling through a guest post right now from Connie. Here it is, Nandek, Nandeck. So Component Studio, Nandek. I will link to these on the tabletop games page of our website, if they're not already there. So like how to design a tabletop game section of our website. I'll link to them there. Yeah. So there are options. Explore the option and find the one that works for you. I would recommend to go with that. BeetleBat says, the only Stonemaier game I played is Rolling Realms. Is there a Wormspan promo pack? There is. Yes, it's on our web store right now. Hopefully we don't sell out of that one. We will make more, of course, if we do. But yeah, there is a promo pack right now for a realm, 4 Rolling Realms inspired by Wyrmspan, along with Crusaders and Obsession were the 2 other new realms we added today. Let's see. Adam says, can people in Asia sign up for the Australian group order interest? Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So you're signing up for a different fulfillment center, basically. In our Australia web store serves Australia, Asia, and New Zealand. Yeah. Let's see. Jan Williams says, was Megan working while you were away as well? No, Megan was not working. She was not. No, she was enjoying her vacation in other ways. Let's see. Alexander says, you should play Baldur's Gate 3 if you want to get a feeling for D&D. Yeah, I've heard great things about Baldur's Gate 3. I'm not much of a digital gamer. So it might be a little bit too complex for me to handle, but I have watched a bunch of videos about how clever the game is and how many different decision points you have in the game, different ways to solve problems, which I think is great in any kind of adventure style game. Chad says, I'm stoked for the progress of the Expeditions expansion. Do you find that this expansion went smoothly? Can you say if Jakob made art for it? Jakob is always the artist for our 1920 plus world products. So definitely he's the artist for and made new art for the Expeditions expansion. And he says, do you find that the expansion went smoothly? I actually found that it was a fairly smooth expansion design process. It was very difficult for me to design Expeditions, but the expansion went much smoother. Yeah. Chad also says, are you currently in the works with new to Stonemaier Games artists? Are we working with any? Yes, we are. Yeah, we have a few new artists that we're working with. Yeah, or new to us at least. Let's see if there's a question here from Edgar. He ordered Wormspan from our European store. He's in the Netherlands. That checks out so far. Became a champion. Ordered the nice game pieces. Oh, awesome. Well, yeah, just sharing what you ordered. Thank you. I really appreciate that. We are hoping it arrives soon too. The freight shipment to Europe, it has not yet arrived due to all the stuff that's happening in the Middle East right now. But it is on the way, and we're expecting it to arrive by late next week. So we think we'll start to see movement on some European orders in the second week of February. And then it will probably take them the rest of February at least, and probably a little bit into March to get out all European orders. Jan Williams says, is there going to be a watch it play tutorial on Wormspan? There isn't. Instead, we worked with Meeple University on this one. They are a smaller channel, but they do a great job with tutorial videos. And we figured with the exposure that Wormspan is getting, we wanted to share that exposure with a smaller channel. So yeah, check out the Meeple University video for a rules video for Wormspan. I think they did a fantastic job. Oh, I wanted to mention, sorry, I had a note to myself about something I needed to mention today. If you are going to Gen Con and you'd love to be on the Stonemaier Games demo team, please check out the events and conventions. And I'll show you where on our website it is. So let's go over to our website. So if you're going to Gen Con, you want to be on our demo team, go over to our website and go to news and then go to events and conventions. Let's go over here. And there is a form right here. Sign up to join our demo team for Gen Con. We'd love to have your help and support. If you're passionate about our products and want to help out there, that is the place to sign up for it on that link. Thanks for considering that. Let's see. Karutsu says, will the Honey Buzz promo pack for Rolling Realms be reprinted? Just bought every promo, but missed out on that one as it literally just sold out. Oh, I'm sorry about that. If we get enough back in stock notifications for any or requests for any given realm, we will make more of them. They're not all that difficult to make, but we do have a minimum order quantity of ideally 1,500 units. We can make 1,000 if we really need to. But yeah, please, we will make more if we get enough interest in it. So please sign up for a back in stock request. This goes for all products, not just Rolling Realms promos. Let's see. Dean says, are there any exclusives if we buy through you? We don't do exclusives. No, we are here to include people in as many ways as possible, not exclude anyone based on an exclusive. I will say, and this will contradict my answer a little bit, there are certain products, like I mentioned earlier, the Stonemaier Games disc golf disc, that we do only sell on our web store because they don't make all that much sense as retail products given the cost versus the price that we'd like to charge for them. So there are a few rare products like that are on our web store, and a few things like a la carte little, I don't know, what's an a la carte example? Like the replacement dry erase markers from Rolling Realms we sell on our web store, but doesn't really make sense for us to sell those elsewhere. You can get other dry erase markers elsewhere. So, but no, importantly, we do not believe in exclusives. We believe in including people, not excluding people, including people in a vast variety of ways and including a vast variety of people. So we are not interested at all in excluding anyone based on anything, including our products. Mark says, would you consider doing a vision-friendly version of cards in viticulture? Mark, this is a question that I've asked for a couple of years now, and I haven't asked it in a while, so maybe I need to ask it again. But I asked people if they'd be interested in us making slightly bigger cards for viticulture with bigger text, because the cards in viticulture are really, really small. And whenever I've asked that, the answer has been no, that people don't seem to be all that interested in it. So perhaps someday we'll consider it, but so far there hasn't been interest in us doing that, or enough interest in it for us to do that. Wes says, what are the main selling points of both Wingspan and Wormspan that should be considered to help decide which one may be better for you? That's a good question, Wes. If you're deciding between the two of them and you haven't played either of them, Wormspan is a little bit more complex than Wingspan. There are a lot of differentiating factors between the two, and you can see them if you go, Wes, if you go to our website. Let's see. I'll pull up my other screen here. I'm stumbling over this question because I'm not trying to sell one game over the other to you. They're just different games. One is a little bit more complex. One is about dragons. One is about birds. So if there's one of those that interests you more. But if you go to our FAQ, here's a section that shows all the differences between Wingspan and Wormspan. Obviously, this doesn't help you if you don't know Wingspan, but if you are looking to see what's different about Wormspan than Wingspan, if these things excite you, that might lean you over to Wormspan. If they don't excite you, you might go to Wingspan. Also, with Wingspan, we have a bunch of expansions for various continents. We don't have any expansions for Wormspan. So if you're interested in going deep into a game, then Wingspan might be for you. That's the best I can answer off the top of my head. I think the key is maybe to watch a review of each game and see which one appeals to you more. We have many different third-party reviews for both games. Fritz Brown also asked, do the playmats fit in the box? Depends on a couple different factors there. They are designed to at least fit in terms of length and width, but oh, sorry, I need to make this bigger. It depends on how many you're trying to fit, how you're trying to fit them, if you're rolling them up, if you're laying them flat. And if you are deciding to leave the cardboard playmats in the box versus removing them from the box. So yes, maybe. Depends on your organizational preferences and how many playmats you're getting and how you want to store them. I know a lot of people ask that question. How do you want me to answer that question? Like, given all that information, like I'm stumbling over that answer a little bit, but I want to be helpful for you. So if there is a better way that I can help answer that question about do Wormspan's playmats fit in the box, let me know. I want to give an honest, transparent answer, but it does depend on so many different variables and factors that it's hard for me to give a single answer to that question. Oh, Chad has a big question. Chad, so I can't answer this off the top of my head, but Chad says, Simon recently picked up a game that failed to fulfill for a different company, Mythic Games, even after a successful campaign. What are the pros and cons of a publisher picking up a game in this way? Would Stonemaier Games ever consider this? That's a great question for a blog, Chad. I like the phrasing. What are the pros and cons? Pros and cons of saving a game. Yeah, I'll think about a blog post for that. Yeah. I'll scroll through see if there's any other questions real quick. I'm sure there are. I might miss them. If I do, feel free to post them on YouTube later. Matthew says, "Is there a plan to collaborate again with Folded Space for an insert for Wyrmspan?" We only did that for Tapestry because it was a unique design challenge. There was a big demand for a storage solution that could hold all the Tapestry stuff. It's something that we wanted to offer at the same time as the release of the third expansion. So typically, we don't work at all with third-party creators of any sort, but we needed to collaborate with them and give them some inside information to work on that. And last, most importantly, we only did it because we knew Tapestry was complete and we weren't going to be adding new stuff. We don't know that for Wormspan. So if we ever got to the point with Wormspan where we knew the game was going to be complete and we knew there needed to be an organizer, we would either make it ourselves or we wouldn't make it if we didn't think the one was necessary, or we would work with a company like Folded Space. Yeah, so maybe, but only that would be potentially years in the future if we do make expansions for Wormspan. Oh, here's the folks in Japan. They live in Okinawa. Oh, okay. I've never been to Okinawa. I've always wanted to go there. So maybe we'll see you there. I'll keep an eye on these. I'll mention a little bit more as we get closer to the trip, and we can talk about that. Chad says, how much fun of convenience does a board game table with a recessed area add to your personal gaming experience? I really like it for campaign games in particular. I like that we can leave a campaign game under the surface of the table and have a different game for game night or just casual gaming on top of the table. All right, I'll try to get to a few more questions. I know that I've run out of time here. I have run out of time. Kevin says, not including Stonemaier Games, what game design do you admire for its rules to depth ratio? Interesting question. Rules to depth. I think Concordia comes to mind. All Play, I think, does a good job with this. I think Plan B Games does a good job with this. So not specific games, but these game companies seem to focus on very streamlined rule sets for games that have a lot of depth. And really any of these games with a lot of cards, like Earth, even Raising Robots, fairly complex game, but a lot of the complexity of the game comes from the cards themselves, not from the rules. Yeah, those are a few that come to mind. Good question. I like that. Sean says, is Span an engine now? Do you foresee additional Span games in the future? So this is referring to like Wormspan. So the idea behind this name is to convey that, and also a Wingspan game is to convey that this is a game within the Wingspan brand. It is similar to Wingspan, but also different, unique to Wingspan. We convey that through having a completely different designer on the box. If it was the same game, then we just have Elizabeth Hargrave as the designer, but different name on the box. If we continue to expand this brand, we will probably use Span to convey that it is part of the Wingspan brand of games, probably most likely. Good Guy Rich says, what advice would you give to someone passionate about game design but finds themselves in a slump to get things working internally in the game design process? The number one thing that I found works for me is that I try to work on more than one game at a time, typically 2 games. So if one game is holding me back, that I've come to a block on that one game, then I'll switch over to the other game that I'm more excited on. And that might give me some ideas eventually to go back to the other game. So I go back and forth. Having 2 projects at once, I find really, really helpful. And sometimes I think it's okay just to take a little bit of a break, maybe to play games. So focus on the fun of tabletop gaming for a little while rather than the design process. And you might be inspired by these other games that you're playing. I find that to be helpful too. I'm sorry you're going through that. That's rough. Oki says, is there any chance you will sell extra Wormspan component trays in the web store? Probably not. We do have other trays on our web store that you can buy, other plastic trays if you'd like, but it's always logistically difficult for us to add an a la carte product to our web store. So I think it's unlikely that we'll do that since we already have an abundance of other plastic trays on our web store. Yeah. All right. Looking for other quick questions here before I go. What new gaming companies are you impressed with? That's a great question. I'm impressed by so many other companies. One way to see what companies I'm impressed with the most are companies that are somewhat similar to Stonemaier Games a little bit, is to look at a blog post that I wrote about Instagram strategies. And there I list a bunch of different companies that I have a lot of respect for. All right. Wow, I'm way behind on comments. Obviously, I'm missing a ton of questions today, but I do have to go. I should go because I'm sure I have a full inbox. I do have to eat lunch with Megan. So I love your questions. I'm sorry if I'm missing your questions. Feel free to post them again on YouTube, and I will answer them in the comments there. I'm going to end the stream, and after that, I'll start to see the comments in YouTube. Not these questions that have already been asked, but new comments and questions I'll see there. Thank you all for joining me for this live cast. It's an exciting day. Please, again, take all the time you need today to figure out what you want for your order, and then place the order containing everything that you want and from our web store, or order it from someone else. If you want to order from a retailer, we welcome that. We invite you to do that as well. Have a great day. I will see you in the comments somewhere, or I'll see you next Wednesday on the next live cast. Take care.